Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 538.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we have a very unique experience today. And you're like, how could it be that unique, Jay? Well, here's what we have. Many of you've gone to, your elementary schools, your high schools. Some of you've gone to college. Some of you even went for more. But one of the things that I find unique in today's education system is the fact that many of those who are teaching subjects haven't actually done the subject that they're teaching, but yet today, that is not the case. And I'm excited for that because I think there's a difference between academic learning and experiential learning, and we've got the cross between the two in a CEO who is also a professor. This is exciting to me, and it should be exciting to you because we are going to learn, in my opinion, about a topic that I think many of us have challenges with, and most importantly, need to think about as we can continue to grow our businesses. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, we've all spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort thinking about the customer experience, your UI, your UX in your app, and you're trying to figure out exactly the customer's journey and their path and how to keep them coming back and make sure that they engage with your marketing and posts. Let me ask you this. When is the last time you've thought of doing that for those that you work with or for those that work for you? How is their engagement? What's their experience been like? And well, I have with me today none other than Tracy Maylett, the CEO of DecisionWise, and that's literally what their business does. He's also the professor of organizational effectiveness at BYU. His company currently operates in a number of countries, but what I'm excited about is how he's been out there changing lives and spreading his knowledge. Has a new book, Engagement Magic, 5 Keys for Engaging People, Leaders, and Organizations. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So let's get ready to listen, learn, and to love Tracy Maylett. Tracy, how you doing?
Good, Jay. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
I am glad that you are here. As you probably heard in the intro, you're in a unique category, in my opinion, because we don't run into many who teach and do at the same time. And I already commend you for that, sir.
I appreciate that. That's very intentional. So I appreciate you saying that.
So this being the first time that you're here, I need to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else the first time that they're here. You ready?
Sure.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, like Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, the Hulk, etc. You get the idea. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, occasionally I can envision myself, running around town, using our products and services and saving customers one sale at a time. And yes, I'm probably dressed in a cape and some tights at that moment. Now, also though, like a superhero, there's a time where that entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, taking some photos, trying to make sure he had enough money to take a girl out on a date at the end. And that's it. Then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers he's got a superhuman ability, and now he's presented with a choice. Am I going to use this for good or for evil? So my question to you is very simple. When it comes down to, we know you as the CEO of DecisionWise. But we know you, for your books. We know you for all the work that you are doing over there at BYU. But what we want to know today It's before all of that. Who is Tracy Maylett?
Oh, it's a good question. I don't know that I've ever been asked that on a podcast, to be honest with you.
Good.
As I look at this, so thanks for the question. Thanks for the introspection here. As I look at it, basically, I think my real purpose in life, and as you get into your career, you start wondering, why am I doing this? And by the way, we're going to talk about meaning here as being one of those critical elements to make yourself, feel like you're engaged in what you do. But as I look at what really brings me meaning, I've gone to a lot of school, and probably too much school. And as I look at also what I've done in my own career, I look and say, what can I say that has really brought me joy in what I do? And I have to say a few things. Number one is, myself on a personal level, family is big for me, and family is so huge. But on the second part of that is, how do I contribute to the world? And look at my contribution, and I have to say, I think that's through people. And as I look at that, I say, what does that actually mean? Well, being able to, when you consider people going to work and spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and they do that for 50 hours a week, that's a majority of, or a good portion of your waking hours. And say, how do you make that so it's something that A, is enjoyable for the employee, but second of all, how do we make sure that the company, the organization, is flourishing because of what that employee experiences? And so to answer your question, I'd have to say, Jay, it's probably, I look at who I am, and I think my real purpose is to create those environments in which people can do their best. And that, whether that comes through teaching, whether that comes through writing, or through leading my own company in those efforts, I think that's really kind of where it comes from.
So, okay, well, let me ask it this way then. Where did that get started? I mean, did you just wake up one day? I mean, most superheroes, there's usually a process. It's like, they start here, but on their journey, they discover, hey, this is where I belong. What was that like for you?
I think I did take the Spider-Man approach, I think, on that one, which is, I was going along in, first of all, I went to school because I wanted to coach football. And as I went, I look back and say that was probably a good thing that didn't ever happen.
Wow.
But as I look at kind of where things came and what that spider was that bit me, there were several pieces that changed the direction of my life. The first one is, I was working in retail. And as I worked in retail, I realized that what I appreciated about retail was understanding how to take care of that customer, care of the employees in the process. And so I geared my career a little bit more towards the employee piece of that, and then ended up going into human resources. And when I was in human resources, again, the Spider-Man analogy, I guess that other spider that bit me that changed my course was, I had to understand that in order to be a successful human resources individual, I needed to understand business in general, and kind of went that different course as well. So I guess I've kind of been steered rather than choosing my own direction. And having the ability to direct a company here as CEO has really allowed that to come and play out. I never started out hoping to be a CEO. I didn't go to school as an undergraduate in business. Those turn of events just happened, and I went through those doors as they opened up.
Interesting. And that's usually what happens, is that it evolves, we mature, we discover. It's not often that we have someone here on the show where they go, yeah, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur from the beginning. I was just born that way. I was selling diapers to my friends in kindergarten. I mean, no. That doesn't happen all the time. And there's usually this self-discovery process. Now, interesting for me anyway, is that you have more letters after your name that I have never seen in my entire life. I need some explanation. I mean, this Ed.D, SPHR, SHRM-SCP. I don't even know what that is. But
those are just initials to impress my teenagers, and it doesn't work. So,
no doubt. But they've got to be a part of your journey in some way.
Oh, they are. That the EDD is a doctorate of education, and basically my doctorate is in organizational change and understanding the way people make organizations change and happen. That starts all the way from the brand new entrepreneur that starts out with one individual, him or herself, all the way up to the Fortune 100 companies that have tens of thousands of employees. And then the others are really focused more. I do have an MBA, so I understand the business portion of this, and that's been extremely valuable in my career. And then the others are related to human resources type certifications. But it's been a wonderful journey, and I wouldn't change any of that.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, this is interesting to me, especially coming from your journey. I know that there's always this point in every entrepreneur's life where, you know what, they discover, oh, I have something special, and then they go, I can offer it to other people. But that once that decision point or realization point happens, that has to be followed up with a decision that sometimes is met with resistance and challenge. So I'm really interested to hear how someone with all the credentials, all of the work history, all of that background and training says, you know what, I'm going to go do my own thing. What was that like?
I love that question. It's, as I look back, 25 plus years ago, as I'm sitting in my college dorm and talking to my roommates who are all business majors. And they were those people that said, I'm going to go out, and a couple of them, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And then a couple of them were, I want to be a CEO of a company. And I thought, you folks are crazy. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to take those risks? And I saw that as just really a risk.
Uh-huh.
And as I started working for large organizations, and I worked for a couple that were just great organizations, I realized that I could control my own destiny better if I were the one calling the shots than allowing someone up at the top of the company of 30,000 employees making that call for me. And that really appealed to me. I didn't intentionally start out wanting to be a CEO or an entrepreneur. But when those opportunities came up and I realized that this is an opportunity for me to do what I want to do, to change my own destiny and shape that, that's what really got me excited. I wish I could say it was because of some wonderful cause that I was trying to support, but that's not the case. It was quite selfish. It was being able to see, I have a contribution here I can make. The way to make that happen is for me to be in control of that destiny. And that's where the entrepreneurial spirit came from.
Got it. Okay. This is good. And I like it. So what I'm hearing in that is risk as you had previously defined it. Well, it just changed. You redefined what risk meant. It was at one time in your life, risk meant this. And you're like, I'm not going down that path. And then it's like, oh, no, risk means this now. So I need to, change some things up. And I get that. A number of entrepreneurs, we don't start out, necessarily thinking that way. But there's something that you said that I've got to dig into, because you used the phrase, I didn't intentionally start out. And I know that there's a number of people listening who didn't intentionally start out thinking that their business was going to grow beyond them. And they would then have to learn to attract other people. And then they'd have to learn how to keep other people. Then they'd have to learn how to motivate other people and compensate other people. And then it becomes something so far removed than what they originally thought they were doing. They're like, man, I'm not actually interfacing with the customer anymore. And they're missing being on the court in that way. I'm curious to know what you would say to that entrepreneur who's in that transition, because, well, you wrote the book on how to attract, retain top performers and drive results.
That makes sense. Well, let's talk about the difference between a founder and an entrepreneur. And often we confuse those words. We use them as if they're the same word. But when you look at a founder is that individual, as the name implies, that is the one who starts that organization. Uh-huh. That organization can be all the way from a nonprofit to a 3-person show to a large corporation. And there's something about a founder that is fairly unique. I don't know that I have the founder in me as much as I do the entrepreneur. Okay. So the founder is the person who basically starts the organization. The entrepreneur is that individual who is able to look at various, first of all, understand the purpose and the vision and the strategy of the organization that he or she runs, and is able to match that to a need out in the world. And an entrepreneur can actually be somebody that remains with that company in an entrepreneurial role for 30 years. An entrepreneur also does not have to be the top of the organization. One of the things that we do in our organization at DecisionWise is we expect our employees, or hope our employees, see the entrepreneurial side, which means that I'm running my own mini business inside a larger organization. The reason I mention those differences is because if you are truly a founder, and we coach a lot of individuals who are founders. That is basically their responsibility, and their love is to be the founder, to start at something and then move on. Then it's probably not right that you continue in that founder role in perpetuity in an organization. Now, we do have a lot of founders who are also entrepreneurs, and those entrepreneurs find new opportunities in everything that they do. They find new ways to match market needs with the strategy of the organization. So to answer your question in a very long way, basically the first thing we need to understand is, are you a founder, are you an entrepreneur, or are you both? If you're a founder, you probably need to move on, and there's a place for that to hand over the reins. If you're an entrepreneur, then that excitement continues. You continue to find new ways to be a founder in different ways and make that happen.
Interesting.
In my career, also, one of the things I've noticed is that there was a point till probably 6-7 years ago that I had to move out of that founder role and allow autonomy for others to come in and implement their ideas as well. That's a tough transition for many people to make, and it wasn't easy for me either.
Well, I mean, it's your baby. You're taking care of it. No one's, and at least we tell ourselves, no one's going to take care of it like we will. And it gets challenging. I've been challenged with this, myself. I mean, the most we've ever had, I think, might be where we are. We're like at around 11 people right now. And for me, that feels like what is going on to some degree, because it's like, oh my gosh, there's always somebody. It feels like there's always somebody needing something, and I've got to be ahead of it in order to help them with it. And I'm just like, okay. But at the same time, the concept of any of them going away and having to find another one just goes, oh my God, I don't want to go through that. I mean, what are we to do?
Yeah, there's that point where, and you described it very well. So all of a sudden you're moving from everything that happens in this organization I touch.
Yep.
My hand is on everything. I know everything that's going on. I know how to run everything. I know how to handle all the technology and all the sales and everything that's involved in that. And there's a point where, and it usually happens about where you're at, honestly, Jay, it's about the 10 employee point, where I have to realize I can't do everything.
Right.
And in fact, as I look at my organization, I realize that there are probably 75% of these jobs that there's absolutely no way I could do. I simply don't have the knowledge to make it happen. That's a big realization that stumps a lot of people. And that's where you move from, founder, which is being involved in everything, and you start moving into that area where my responsibility really is to manage or lead these very good people who are much more competent in these areas than I am.
And that's okay. You just nailed my life right there, because I'm looking at a lot of the things and going, if that person goes away, I have no idea how to do 10% of what I can fake it for a while, but it's just not gonna be the same, and I'm gonna have to find another person like that person. That's a problem. And I start thinking about how to keep them, how to attract them, how to make sure that they're still, as you would say, engaged. Now, with that being said, my question to you is, because I think everybody listening understands what it means to have engagement from a social media aspect or engagement with your customers. What do you mean by employee engagement? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey. I know that if you've ever gone over to the site, CashFlowDiary.com, you may have asked yourself, where on earth do you get a domain name from? Especially as you are beginning to build your bigger, better, badder business, you need a web presence. You need the email address. You need a way for people to contact you electronically so that you can stop doing the @gmail.com game. Well, the good folks over at GoDaddy have definitely supplied us with every domain that we have ever used. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygodaddy.com/CashFlowDiary. Again, that's trygodaddy.com/CashFlowDiary, because it's a quick way for you to get set up to capture your domain name the exact way that you want it. They got easy search functions, and most importantly for you is that you'll be up and running today. As I said, once you get started, stay started. Don't let small little obstacles of how to get your own domain name going stop you. So again, go to trygodaddy.com/CashFlowDiary, and let's get back to the rest of the story.
Well, let's take what you just mentioned, the engagement in social media, engagement with your customers, etc.
Okay.
and then we'll apply that. So let's break it down. First of all, engagement has two parts.
All right.
The first part is some type of feeling or connection. So you look at engagement in social media, it means that I'm feeling something that causes me to do the second part, which is to act. Okay, so engagement has two parts, both feeling and doing something about it. So when we look at engagement in social media, basically what we're trying to do is get people on some type of emotional level to connect with you. That emotional level could be really a strong, heartfelt emotion, or it could be simply a desire to understand more, and then do something about that. So when we apply that concept to employee engagement, it's the same kind of general idea, and this is where people get really messed up. And that is that engagement is both feeling and doing. What we're trying to do is get our employees to feel something. That feeling is that loyalty, that desire to give the discretionary effort to their jobs, etc. But then it's to do something about it. That it results in something because of that feeling that I have, that joy that I have in working with this company, or that loyalty that I feel. I in turn reciprocate and give something back to the organization. And where we're really missing the boat when we talk about employee engagement, and lots of articles that I read or people that are speaking, they're just talking about the first half of that feeling. I want my employees to be happy at work. That's great that they're happy at work, but unless they're doing something about it, it really doesn't help me much. That sounds cold, Jay. I realize that. But at the same time, I'm not in the business to just make people happy. I'm in the business to help them be their best selves so they can also help our organization grow.
Interesting. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be very transparent and tell you the thought that came to my head the moment you were talking.
Please do.
I know that there are many who probably have had this thought or were thinking it as well, going, well, Tracy, I don't need to do any of that. I just got to pay them more.
The reason I'm at a loss for words here is because I'm actually smiling and laughing. You don't know how many times I've heard that same thing.
Oh, I can imagine it's more than once. That's why I'm saying it, though, because I know that those that are listening are thinking the same thing. Like, why do I need to even bother with that when I can just pay them more? But at the same time, I think what you're saying is that paying them more doesn't always still doesn't get the result.
It doesn't. I'm going to put my nerd hat, my professor hat on here and talk about what's called the adaptation principle.
Okay.
There's a term in organizational psychology that's called a hygiene factor. Let me explain that for just a second, because I think it'll make sense the way we answer this. Hygiene factors, it was defined by a gentleman by the name of Herzberg a number of years ago. And he said hygiene factors, I'm just going to reduce this to really simple terms, and that is hygiene factors are those things about our job or the work that we do that do not necessarily motivate us, but the lack thereof cause us to be demotivated or dissatisfied. I'll give you an example of this. We had an automotive firm contact us a number of years ago because they had an assault in one of their parking lots, and I apologize for that picture. But an assault in one of their parking lots where one of their employees was messed up pretty bad, and it was very unfortunate. An employee was robbed. And they contacted us because of the way that just destroyed the culture. As you can imagine what that would do to the organization. Right. Well, let's look at that for a second. And we were able to work with these folks, and it was a wonderful experience overall and kind of changed the way things happen. But the fact that you're safe at work does not cause you to be motivated. So when was the last time you said, I'm going to go to work today and I'm so excited because I'm safe? You just don't do. The minute I take that away from you, you become dissatisfied with your job. Okay, so that's a hygiene factor. When I pull that away, or it's not what I need it to be, I become dissatisfied. But just having that there does not cause me to be motivated. So now let's translate that to pay for just a second. One of the things that we find with pay is that it's a hygiene factor. Okay, so some of the studies that we've done is if I give an employee who's making, say, $50,000 a year, if I give that employee a $500 bonus, that's a decent bonus. That feels pretty good. Psychologically, that bonus lasts about as long as it takes for them to spend it. So honestly, that lasts about 10 days is what we find. So that extra increase that you just gave them, psychologically, that excitement lasts about 10 days. When we talk about people leaving in organizations and we do exit surveys, we do a lot of those, when employee leaves, find out why did they leave. And the managers often say it's because they're making 5% more down the road. Yet we ask that employee, and very rarely does that come up. Once in a while, it comes up as the first thing they say, but we dig into it more and they say, no, actually, I'm leaving because I don't like my boss, or because I have opportunities to grow further on down the road. And that's what we call the adaptation principle. What happens is when we receive something, we adapt to that very quickly. So if I give you a $10,000 raise, or you give me a $2,000 raise, I adapt to that very quickly. I'll give you another example of this, and that becomes the new norm. Let's suppose I roll out some awesome perks to my employees. I say, all right, everybody, we're going to take you to, we're going to bring in and have Taco Tuesdays, because it's a cool idea. Taco Tuesdays. Well, I find that's wonderful. And by the way, if you take that away from me, you're going to hear about it. There's a certain point that I adapt to it, and it just becomes the norm. It's what happens. It's what we do. And then I'm really excited until I find out that the company down the road has Fajita Fridays. Then now I'm ticked. And I'm even more upset when I find out the company next to us has Margarita Mondays. I'm really upset because what I'm doing is I've adapted to something. So my long answer there is what happens with compensation is it's a hygiene factor. It is something that has to be there in order to meet our needs, but it doesn't cause me to be more engaged or more motivated. If I receive 5% more, I'm not going to now give 110% versus 105%. It just doesn't happen. We also adapt to that new level of pay, and it becomes our new standard. Mm-hmm. We have to keep raising and raising and raising that standard to get that short-term boost that may only last 10 days.
And I guess here's the obviously then the question that's coming to my mind is there's this diminishing returns is what you're saying, and I understand that, and there's only so much I can even pay anyway and still keep the business profitable, all these other things. If we are adapting to everything, it doesn't seem to matter what I could give. There's nothing I can give them, or is there?
That's why we have to look at the other side of the equation. All right, so I love what Daniel Pink says about pay. Pay is what's needed until we can take the issue of pay off the table. All right, so what that means is we still have to pay your employees enough so that they're meeting market value, that they're meeting their own needs, and then pay is taken off the table. So to answer your question, what is next? Well, that's what we've spent the last 10 years doing. In all honesty, that was the question that we started out with. It started particularly around the time of the recession, when what was happening is employees were without jobs, and all of a sudden just to have a job they were grateful for that job. It didn't mean that they were engaged in what they did. So what we did is we started this massive database. And over the last 3 years in particular, that database has now grown to 34 million survey responses. So it's the largest of its kind. And we're asking the question, what causes you to engage in your work, in your life, just as a customer, whatever that may be? What causes you to both feel and act because of that? And as we look at engagement, one of the things that we find very clearly is that there were 4 things that stood out. And then as we did more research, we found a 5th. And we call these our keys for engaging people, leaders, and organizations. And it's easy to remember by the acronym MAGIC. All right. So we didn't set out to start, but that's where it came in.
Got it.
And those elements that we found pretty clearly are, first of all, meaning. So that's the M. I need to find purpose in my job just beyond the job itself. So if I'm out there, you look at, for example, doctors who may go to a foreign country and spend 3 months in horrible conditions, and they make $15,000 that year for doing it, yet they feel like there's a reason for what they're doing. That's meaning. That's the first thing we found is through that database of 34 million that creates engagement. The second one is autonomy. When I feel like I have the ability to use my skills in the best way that works for me, then I'm autonomous. I'm able to contribute more. That does not mean anarchy or chaos. We still have to operate within boundaries, but when I have some degree of autonomy, I tend to be more focused and engaged in what I do. The next one is the G, which is growth. we find in particularly millennials and the subsequent generations, also the ones that were now getting out of college or out of high school and entering the workforce, we find that growth, people will leave a business or an organization for growth opportunities faster than they would anything else in today's generation. What that means is, even if I'm getting less pay working for the guy next door than I am with you, Jay, but I find that I can grow, then I'm likely to leave that organization. And growth is finding yourself being better today than you were yesterday. That's the G. The next is I, or impact. I'm finding results of my effort. So I come to work and I feel like I actually did something that there's a reason behind it. So the meaning and the impact go hand in hand. Impact is seeing results of your effort. And then finally, the last one is connection. A connection can happen in a lot of different ways. It's a sense of belonging to something beyond just yourself. It can be a connection to your organization. Jay, you do some cool things in your organization. To be able to work with individuals who have different ideas and spread these concepts, that to me is appealing. So I may be connected to your organization in that way. It may be a social connection. I just like the people that I work with. It may be a connection to the mission of what we do. But I find a sense of belonging to something greater than myself. And we find that when those 5 elements are present, whether that's at work or at home, or it may be a community or a church or whatever that may be, when those elements are present, then I tend to engage in what I do. And the money piece, so long as it meets my basic needs, it's not a motivator. These 5 pieces are.
Interesting. So again, going to be transparent with the thought that I know I was having, and that I'm going to say to a lot of the audience, is here's what you just said. I'm interpreting everything you just said, and I'm going, you know what you're saying right now is, you're saying in a very nice way, you employers out there, myself included, if you're just leaning on pay, we're being lazy.
Yeah, that's it. That's the lazy leader's way of trying to resolve a problem or avoid a problem. Yeah, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, and as you were talking, I'm writing notes, and I'm just going, oh, I do that one, I don't do that one, and it's like, how could I do that one? And at least bringing this conversation to the forefront in your book, Engagement Magic, is a great idea to have us thinking about this, because again, there's only so many people you can talk to on a daily basis, but yet at the same time, I think if more of us were doing this and thinking about it, it would help. But I have a question, because when it comes to meaning, like the purpose, I can see how I, as the leader, can help people understand that one. That one, I can I can take responsibility for helping them see the meaning and helping them understand. Yeah, you may think you're only in the quote unquote customer experience department, but let me tell you, here's how you are impacting the company, and here's what it means, and here's the difference that it's making. But my question though is that autonomy one. How do I'm like, use the skills in the best way that works for me? Help elaborate if you can.
You got it. That's one that a lot of leaders have trouble with, because they think that autonomy, what we're saying is, let them do whatever they want to do. Well, that's not the way to run a business. That's anarchy or chaos. Not what we're doing. What we are saying, and we talk a lot about this in the book and employee experience. What we're doing is saying there is set expectations, and then allow people to run within those expectations or boundaries. So let's suppose that, let's look, for example, at a soccer field. The soccer field, you have rules that you have to abide by. You have a playing field that you have to play within. So those are your constraints. Those are your boundaries. And what happens is, a lot of leaders, a lot of managers aren't very good at sharing those boundaries with their team. They're not very good at saying, here are the rules, here's the playing field, here's what you do. And then also, many are not very good at allowing people to play the game within those boundaries. So the ideal leader, when it comes to autonomy, is one who sets those boundaries and says, so long as you operate within those parameters, I'm going to stay out of it and let you run with your abilities and just make it happen. I'm going to let you to shoot at the goal when you choose to do that. If you want to take in basketball the 3-point shot, I believe in you. You do it, so long as you operate within these boundaries and these rules that we set. So there are 2 things that you can do there. Number one is, as a manager, Be very clear about those expectations and those rules. Set those rules. But then second, step back and let people do their best within those boundaries. And you'll be surprised at what happens.
I like that. I like that a lot. It also might mean some of us, I mean, I can hear people right now going, I might have to change my interview process if this is what I'm going to do, but okay.
Back to one of your first questions, and that is, how do we take the entrepreneur, that founder, and when you run into those difficulties of letting go? It's the autonomy in magic that hits at that point, to where you have to say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire the best people, I'm going to set the boundaries, and then I'm going to step out of their way and let them work their magic, let them make it happen.
Yeah.
That's a tough move for a lot of entrepreneurs to make, and that's the A in autonomy.
Now, I had a mentor in my past who he would always say to me the following phrase. He said, Jay, people stay where they grow. So I feel like I understand the G, but I also feel like you're meaning more than just make sure they have some personal development books and go to training. I feel like it's more than that when you say it, though.
Yeah, there's the being stretched and challenged. So it's not just going off to a course. 15 years ago, growth meant you'd send me off to a course back east, right? And
Right.
You're there 3 days or a convention. Well, that's great. Continue doing that. But at the same time, growth is being stretched and challenged in a way that makes you better today than you were yesterday. Those don't always happen through promotions, particularly in a young organization. Where do you get promoted to? That don't happen through promotions. It's through challenge and stretch assignments. And sometimes that comes through some difficulty. Sometimes those challenge assignments may not be something that are necessarily asked for. And the adept and the skilled leader is one who's able to say, I'm going to throw some challenges at you and let you run with that and see what that does for you.
But is there no concern with people not, feeling like, I can't do it and quitting in some way, shape, or form? I mean, I don't know. There's a difference in, like, I know me, if I'm presented with the challenge, part of the reason I'm going to push through is because it's my baby. If it doesn't push through, then I'm going to have to start another business. Who wants to do that? But for them, I'll just go get a different job if I don't want to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, there are two pieces there that are very important. First, we often, as entrepreneurs or founders, think that my baby is different than your baby. And it is. I understand that. It's my company. It's your company. We often think that the only way to get employees to step up to the plate is by paying them more, like you just said. But really, honestly, when was the last time you went to work or your employees came to work and said, I sure hope today is boring. Sure hope it sucks the life out of me today. We don't. Our natural human instinct is that we want to grow and become better. And we tap into that, it really helps. So that's the growth piece. The second part of that is the term that's called in psychology the zone of proximal development. And what it means is that there are certain things that we do that are too easy for us, and we become frustrated. There are things that are in the zone that we do. It's the flow. It just is natural for us. It's on autopilot for us. It's like driving down the interstate and turning off at an exit that you go home every single night, and you don't even realize that you did that. You get home and don't realize the steps that you took. It's because we're on autopilot, and that's where most employees function, is in that autopilot. There's also that area to the extreme, which is too difficult for us, and that becomes a true stressor for us. I do too much of this and I'm going to be stressed forever. But then there's that sweet zone that's called the zone of proximal development. That's just enough to stretch us and challenge us, but it's not on a long-term basis, so much so that it becomes a stressor for us. And the ideal leader is one who can understand that employee and say, I think I can stretch her just a little bit with this assignment. And I'd like to sit down with you and talk to you about that. That's the zone of proximal development. And that's where growth really happens.
Man, I don't know if professors and teachers have changed over the years or what, but I know this. if you were one of my professors, I probably wouldn't have dropped out of college. That's all I'm going to say right there. Because as I'm listening to you, I'm like, wow, this is useful, and it's done in a way that I can actually do something with it. And the fact that you write books to help those of us, be able to access what it is that you do, I think is amazing. And even with all of that, I want to keep talking, but what I must do is that I know that there's a number of individuals who have listened this far, who want to know more, who want to find out more about what you've got going on at DecisionWise, or maybe even pick up a copy of one of your books. What's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you?
There are two ways. The first one is go ahead, visit our website, DecisionWise.com. That's all one word, DecisionWise.com. You'll find some information there. We don't just post information about our services, but we actually provide a lot of content there. You'll have access to webinars and podcasts and things like that, as well as blogs. Second way is we'll just mention those two books. The first one is the Employee Experience: How to Attract Talent, Retain Top Performers, and Drive Results. That was published by Wiley. It's called the Employee Experience, where we do talk about how do you make that the ideal experience for your employees and yourself. And then the last one, which we published in January, is Engagement Magic, which you just mentioned. That's been a wonderful book, and it received a lot of good press. And it's been exciting to write that because I think it applies to both individuals and organizations, as well as the leaders in those organizations. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. I think and hope that a number of the entrepreneurs listening follow through, because we all have this challenge. And even if we're the only one, how do I keep myself engaged can be the challenge. Now, as we wind down, I've got a final question for you, because I'm curious to hear your answer. Because here's what I know. I know that somebody listening, as they've listened this entire time, they've gotten to this point where I like to call it the precipice of decision. They were at one spot when they started listening. They were thinking they needed to make a decision, but now they're like, you know what? That's it. I can do this. I can go beyond 10 employees. I can actually get my first employee. You know what? It's time for 1,000 or 2,000. I can make this happen. I can implement the stuff. We can expand and make our vision bigger and better. Now, even though they're there, like I know, Tracy, that when you reach that precipice, oftentimes you have a companion, and that companion tends to come in the form of a voice, and it's a voice that reminds you. It's like, ooh, do you remember what happened last time you hired somebody? Ooh, that didn't go well when you tried that. I mean, do you even have an employee manual? I mean, like, when's the last? I mean, really? You, HR? Are you sure? And for some people, they're actually related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. They're going to follow through, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. They're going to do exactly what you suggest. So my question is simple. What do they do?
Oh, excellent question. There are two things. Number one is our research has very clearly shown that a leader who is engaged is 213% more likely to have a team that's engaged. So my message there is, if you're not excited about what you do and you're disengaged, whether you think that's showing or not, I can promise you it is showing. So the first thing is, I need to address I need to look at the man in the mirror first. I need to address that. And if I am engaged, then I'm much more likely to engage the team. The second part of this is just something to remember. And that is, remember that your business or your organization is technically just a legal construct. What that means is it's just a piece of paper that says you formed this corporation or this limited liability company. What makes your business go is the people in your business. And if you can focus on creating that people experience, then the financial results will follow. But we often mix that up. We put that backwards. So my second piece of advice would be, focus on creating that employee experience, and they'll take care of the rest of it for you. They're the ones that interface with the customer. It's not you all day long. They're the ones that determine whether that product is good. They're the ones that understand the 75% of your business that you don't. Focus on creating their experience rather than the other way around, and the results will follow.
I love that 100%. Like I said, I appreciate you living at what some would even call a double life when you're a professor and an entrepreneur at the same time. I can't even imagine the cognitive dissonance that you can sometimes have to deal with other people and all this other stuff. But you're out there, you're sharing it, you're making it happen. And I appreciate that. And I just want to be the first to say thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir. Thank
you. Wouldn't change a thing. I appreciate your time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to DecisionWise. That means pick up a copy of the book. That means when you pick up the copy of the book this time, read it and do what it says. Because you know, like I know, you learned some things today. You had many epiphanies going, ooh, I should do that. Ooh, I could do that. Wonder what happened if I did that. You had that thought. And now it's your chance to go and implement it at the end of the day. Remember, you focused on your customer experience. Now it's time to think about the employee's experience as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.